Hello, dungeon dudes. Imagine old people here, and I am back. Sorry for the infrequent uploads, as for the past few weeks I have been quite busy with things like my dad's birthday, vacation, and preparing for, of course, America's Independence Day. However, I am back with a video, and I thought that this video would be perfect to show off my love and appreciation for the new Elden Ring DLC by giving you all a monster stat block for one of the most infamous bosses in all of FromSoft history, Malenia, Blade of Miquella. Moving right into the top of the stat block, you will see that I made Malenia a large celestial. Now, the reason I made her a large celestial was mainly because of the fact that she is above average height for a medium creature, standing at about 8 feet tall, and of course a celestial, as she is a demigod. I made her lawful neutral, as she is a soldier. She follows laws and a code of honor protecting her brother, Miquella. Moving down to the armor class, you can see that I gave her a 24 armor class based off her half-plate armor, that unalloyed gold that kind of suppresses her scarlet rot, and although I did debate changing her armor class for phase 2 to be a bit lower, I thought that it wouldn't really make sense to change it necessarily, so I just decided to keep it the same. Her hit points are 526, with the rolled stats of 26 d20 plus 240 HP, as Malenia is supposed to be a final boss-like character. In fact, she could be the big bad evil guy, in quotations, of your level 20 campaign if you wanted. And of course I gave her a speed of 45 feet, as she can definitely close gaps quickly. Moving right into Malenia's stats, I of course gave her a 30 in both of her physical stats for attacking, a 30 in strength and 30 in dexterity, as for Malenia, that's really the only thing that made sense. She is entirely agile and able to keep up with some of the fastest characters in the series, and she is also so incredibly strong, able to swing her sword around and deal massive amounts of damage. I gave her a constitution of 26, and while that might conflict with some people's perception of the lore, as she is affected by scarlet rot and actively sick, you have to remember she's been afflicted by scarlet rot her entire life, and whilst the player may only survive for a little while being scarlet rotted unless they have a prevention method, she has survived an entire lifetime that could have been hundreds of years long with the scarlet rot, never really having to suppress it until Miquella gave her a way to. And even when she would release it, she would still be able to live and survive until the Tarnished eventually kills her. I gave her an intelligence of 18, as she obviously has incredible battle IQ and seems quite intelligent in the way she carries herself. A wisdom of 12, as she is entirely blind, so you can't really read people if you can't see their face, nor can you really perceive people if you can't see them. However, I did still give her something above average so that she could have a bit of an above average perception, because in all technicality, she is able to perceive you incredibly well, which is why she's able to track you down. And finally, a charisma of 16, as she was beloved by all of her clean rot knights, even one by the name of Finlay, who carried her all the way back from Caelid back to the Halig tree. Moving on to Malenia's saving throws, I gave her proficiency in all of them. It only makes sense for someone that is not just a demigod but also an Empyrean, meaning she is next in line to become a god after Marika. And so, what else is expected of a god except to be proficient in all of these saving throws? For skills, I gave her proficiency in acrobatics, athletics, and perception, as acrobatics and athletics are obviously two of her greatest things, and I gave her proficiency in perception as the blind man allowed her to see by teaching her how to fight even while blind, and she can basically use that fighting style to perceive the things around her. I gave her a vulnerability to fire, as, I mean, that's basically what the game does as well. If you have fire damage, she's incredibly weak to fire, and I did debate giving her also a vulnerability to cold damage, as frost pots and frost is also really good against Malenia. However, I decided against that because giving her 2 vulnerabilities is entirely insane, especially when fire is one of the most common damage types in Dungeons and Dragons, especially for arcane spellcasters, and so she's already gonna be fireball bombed out of her mind anyways, so why give her also something where she can be trapped by the druid in an ice storm and basically just trivialized? But I did give her resistance to bludgeoning, necrotic, piercing, radiant, and slashing. Now, piercing, radiant, slashing, and bludgeoning may make sense to you all as, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from, that's just a normal boss thing, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing resistance, but I also did, as I said, give her resistance to necrotic and radiant because she's a demigod, and Aasimars have resistance to necrotic and radiant damage, so why shouldn't she? I gave her immunity to the blinded condition, as she's literally already blind, charmed condition, as it doesn't really make sense for your players to be able to charm her, as she really just can't be charmed. She is delusional anyways from the Scarlet Rot, and that's why she attacks the Tarnished in the first place. She is also immune to the frightened condition, as she has never run away from a fight, and the grappled condition because it just doesn't really make sense for a player to be able to grapple someone so nimble. I gave her a blind sight of 600 feet just so that she could perceive your players really wherever they are in the close vicinity of her, and a passive perception of 12 just based off of her normal wisdom. I also gave her the ability to speak Abyssal, Celestial, Common, and Sylvan, a challenge rating of 30 of course, and that means her proficiency bonus is at a +9. Moving on to Malenia's abilities, we have first off Attached Blade, which basically means Malenia cannot be disarmed. Obviously, since the Hand of Malenia, which is Malenia's weapon, is attached to her unalloyed gold arm, I didn't find it right that she could be disarmed. I gave her 5 legendary resistances, as comparing this stat block with the other creatures' stat blocks in CR30, it only makes sense to give her 5 legendary resistances, which basically means 5 saving throws per day. She can just choose to succeed if she happens to fail. She gets an ability known as Impure Purity, which means that Malenia cannot be affected by spells and other magical effects that do not deal damage. This is incredible because that means that Malenia cannot be affected by spells like Vortex Warp, Banishment, or even True Polymorph, which makes it so that Malenia really is just, you have to kill her. There is no other way to deal with her. You are going to kill her. That is the only way to deal with Malenia. Immortal Warrior. If Malenia dies, she is revived within 20 miles of where she was killed in 1d100 years. I think this makes sense based off the fact that whenever you defeat an enemy in Elden Ring, it says things like enemy felled, demigod felled, legend felled. The only time it says slain is when you kill the Elden Beast and it says god slain, which makes sense because you stole the Rune of Death from Malekith to go kill the Elden Beast. And so because of that, I think that it has something to do with the remembrances or something like that, where the demigods or just all of the creatures that we kill in general can come back at some point. Even the creatures without remembrances maybe can come back in a sort of reincarnation cycle, because we know that the spirit ashes that we see throughout the game aren't actually dead. I mean, they are dead, but they are just the spirits that got lost on their way to return to the Erdtree, and I'm assuming the way they revive is returning to the Erdtree and becoming revived. So I just gave Malenia a revive mechanic because of that. I also gave her a mechanic based off of her dealing damage to the Tarnished and healing off of that, called Sapping Strikes. So each time Malenia deals damage to a creature, she heals herself for 20 flat, or if you want to roll, 4d8 HP. If she hits multiple enemies in the same attack, she heals for each individual creature. Meaning, like, if she did her waterfowl dance and hit 6 people, she would get 6 instances of the heal, which is incredible because I'm assuming you're gonna throw this against a party of people and not just a one-on-one. Trained Warrior means Malenia can take a reaction each turn, which she only has 1 reaction, which I will go over later, but it is an incredible reaction, and her able to take it each turn is amazing. I gave her magical resistance, which just means that Malenia has advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects, which, par for the course for a lot of the high-level D&D monsters. Finally, I gave her her mythic transformation known as Goddess of Rot, her phase 2 essentially, which recharges after a short or long rest. If Malenia would be reduced to 0 hit points, her current hit point total instead resets to 450 hit points. She recharges her Waterfowl Dance and she regains any expended uses of legendary resistance, which technically means that during the fight, Malenia will have a total of 10 legendary resistances, which is kind of crazy. Additionally, Malenia can use the options in her Mythic Actions category for about 1 hour. Moving on to Malenia's actions, I of course gave her a multi-attack based off of just how fast and how ruthless she is in the game. With her multi-attack, she can make 4 Hand of Malenia attacks, 1 grab attack, and 1 kick attack. Moving on to the Hand of Malenia, it is of course a melee weapon attack with a plus 22 to hit, a reach of 10 feet, 1 target, and it does 21 slashing damage on a hit, but if you would like to roll, it is 2d6 plus 13 slashing damage. In her Goddess of Rot form only, if a creature is hit by this attack, that creature must make a DC 17 Constitution saving throw or be affected by Scarlet Rot until the end of their second turn after being hit by this attack. When a creature is affected by Scarlet Rot, they are poisoned, blinded, and they take 20, or if you want to roll, 4d8 poison damage at the start of their turn. Her grab attack is also a melee weapon attack with a plus 19 to hit, a reach of 5 feet, and is also single target. It does 17 bludgeoning damage, or 1d10 plus 10 if you'd like to roll. If a creature is hit by this attack, they must make a DC 27 strength saving throw, and on a failure they are grabbed, thrown into the air, and stabbed in the chest, taking 21 or 2d6 plus 13 piercing damage. Moving on to Malenia's kick attack, it is also a melee weapon attack with a plus 19 to hit, a reach of 5 feet, and is also single target. It does 20 or 2d8 plus 10 bludgeoning damage, and when a creature is hit by this attack, they must make a DC 27 strength saving throw or be knocked prone. Finally, Malenia's action outside of her multi-attack is known as her Waterfowl Dance, which recharges on a 5 or a 6. Essentially, at the start of Malenia's turn, the DM will roll a d6, and on a 5 or a 6, it will recharge, and Malenia will be able to use it again. For this attack, Malenia jumps into the air, preparing to deliver 3 devastating attacks. Malenia chooses the first point within 150 feet of her, with the next point being chosen within 150 feet of the first point, and the third point being chosen within 150 feet of the second point. Basically meaning, from her initial point, she travels up to 150 feet, and from that second point, she gets to travel up to another 150 feet in any direction, and from that third point, she gets to travel another 150 feet in any direction. So it can zigzag across the map, it can hit 3 distinct groups, all in a certain range from each other, or it could just be 3 condensed points all at the same point if the group is all grouped up. At each of the points, every creature in a 20-foot radius must make a DC 27 dexterity saving throw, taking 120 or 30 d6 slashing damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful save. In her Goddess of Rot form, if a creature is hit by this attack, that creature must make a DC 17 Constitution saving throw or be affected by Scarlet Rot until the end of their second turn after being hit by this attack. When a creature is affected by Scarlet Rot, they are poisoned, blinded, and take 20 or 48 poison damage at the start of their turn. Moving on to Malenia's bonus actions, she can first take the bonus attack bonus action, meaning she can either make 2 Hand of Malenia attacks, 1 grab attack, or 1 kick attack as a bonus action. Malenia can also dash as a bonus action, meaning she can take the dash action to double her movement speed for the turn. And finally, she has a bonus action that also has a recharge called Preparation, which recharges on a 5 or a 6. Basically, what this does is Malenia can prepare herself for the next incoming wave, causing all attack rolls against her to be at disadvantage until the end of her next turn. Sliding right into her reactions after that, Malenia only has 1 reaction, but remember, because she can take a reaction each turn, she just gets to essentially spam this on every turn of combat, and it is known as Dodge. Whenever Malenia would take damage from a ranged attack, she can choose to dodge the attack and take no damage. I basically based this off of Malenia's tendency to step out of the way of slow ranged attacks and things of the sort. Now it is time to move into Malenia's legendary actions. Basically, these legendary actions can be taken at the end of the current turn for whoever's going. So basically, let's say your wizard just went, Malenia can immediately take a legendary action and use these legendary actions she has, 3, to do the specific moves that are listed under the legendary actions, basically, section. and she regains all of her spent legendary actions at the start of her turn. Now she can spend one action to do the Hand of Malenia, which makes a Hand of Malenia attack. She can do one for a grab attack, basically spend one action, make a grab attack. And finally, she has one called Counter Attack, which costs 2 actions. Basically, if Malenia received damage from a creature this turn, she can make 3 Hand of Malenia attacks against that creature. Essentially, how this works is, let's say your Paladin ran up and hit her with a Divine Smite, and then Malenia could look at him and say, "You're mine," 2 legendary actions spent to make 3 Hand of Malenia attacks against that Paladin. Next up, we head into Malenia's mythic actions. Now, these are very similar to legendary actions, however, they can only be used once Malenia's Goddess of Rot trait has been activated, and it's within an hour of that trait being activated. She can use 2 legendary actions to use her mirror clone image, which means Malenia creates 6 mirror images that can move up to 60 feet away from Malenia and each make 1 Hand of Malenia attack, or she can use one of her most infamous moves, the Scarlet Aeonia, which costs all 3 of her legendary actions. However, this means that Malenia jumps into an area within 150 feet of her before bursting forth with a blast of Scarlet Rot. Each creature within 30 feet of her must make a DC 27 Constitution saving throw, and on a failure, the creature will take 30 or 68 poison damage and be affected by Scarlet Rot until the end of their 4th turn, taking half as much damage on a success and not being affected by Scarlet Rot. And if you're asking how does Scarlet Rot work, well, simply refer back to the Hand of Malenia attack or the Waterfowl Dance attack for how Scarlet Rot works. Moving on into the hardest section of this video to kind of plan out and write about is the 3 sort of encounter options that I can give you, as Malenia really is just a one-trick pony for the encounters you can give her. However, I think I've crafted a good amount of encounters that can somewhat makes sense within your D&D campaigns. And here comes the first one. The first encounter you could realistically do with Malenia is, instead of just making it Malenia, change the name to something else. Maybe you have a super strong swordsman in your world that you've created and you just want a stat block for it. Just take the name Malenia Blade of Miquella off and replace it with your own strongest character. Take Hand of Malenia away and just replace it with their sword. And if you want to add some extra things to this character stat block because you want your character to be a bit different, maybe you don't want them doing all this Scarlet Rot stuff, maybe you don't want them to have a mythical form, so you just forget the Goddess of Rot thing altogether, and you take away a couple of things to make it your own. That's honestly a fair thing to do, as this stat block really is focused in on just being for Malenia, and as I said, Malenia really is a one boss type of thing. She is just waiting in a room, waiting to fight. The second encounter I had in mind was just to run Malenia as Malenia. She's deep within the Halig tree, and she's the final boss of the Halig tree. Have your players go through an Elden Ring campaign. I know it'll be long, and it's something you have to really commit to if you want to do it, but trust me, from experience, I know that it's a lot of fun, and it's a good way to get people interested in the world of Elden Ring without forcing them to either watch videos from creators like Miss Chalice and VaatiVidya, or to find out the lore through actually playing the game, because some of my friends, they don't like playing games like that. They don't like the challenge of FromSoft games, and honestly, they aren't for everyone. Even though I enjoy them and love them to no end, they really are not for everyone. And even though Elden Ring is the most accessible one, it is still a pretty expensive game, especially for some people. And the DLC being $40 doesn't help that much out either. And so because of that, it's a chance to allow my friends and a chance to allow your players to experience the world of Elden Ring, even though they may never have wanted to before, or may never have had the means to do so before. And I think that that's one of the greatest things about D&D, is that you can really do anything you want. I've played through a Baldur's Gate 3 campaign with my friends. I'm playing through an Elden Ring campaign with my friends. And at some point, I even want to do a Fallout 4 campaign with my friends, where my friends are all the sole survivor, quote unquote, not actually the sole survivor, as the sole survivor has to be a single person, but of course they'll all be from that same vault. And I think it's such a cool idea to run things like that and to do things like that for my friends so they can experience the games I love without having to spend money on said games. The final encounter idea I had for Malenia, Blade of Miquella, was to make her your final boss. And I know it sounds kind of like a cop-out and kind of cheesy, but in all honesty, she has both the stat block and the lore to back up being a final boss. So, in all honesty, if you're struggling to find a final boss that you think will really challenge your players, especially if your players are incredibly power gamey, this is an incredible challenge that they will have to really use their brains to try and think around. I mean, yes, she may be vulnerable to fire damage, so fireball spamming is, inevitable. However, she does have the ability to dodge most of those fireballs with her magical resistances, her legendary resistances, and the fact that she just has an insanely large HP pool. Your characters are eventually gonna run out of fireballs. However, I do not suggest just keeping Malenia as a stagnant person. She is incredibly intelligent, and so the fact that she's taking so much damage from these fireballing wizards would mean that she more than likely is going to go after them first. Play Malenia as a very intelligent fighter. Play her as if you are power gaming against your players, because that's what Malenia is supposed to be. She's an incredible fighter and has the skill to back it up. And so because of that, she would definitely target someone that she knows is exploiting her weakness. And that is the end of the video. I want to thank you guys so much for your patience, as it has been quite a while since my last upload, and I also want to thank you guys for all the support you've been giving me. And I don't typically ask this, but if you would please like and subscribe, that'd be great. Basically, how YouTube works is if I say that, you guys are more likely to do it than if I don't say it at all, and I would appreciate it. I mean, it's nothing off your back, and it would just help the channel so much more, as honestly, even though I'm doing this stuff for fun, I would like more people to see this and more people to have these stat blocks at their disposal, because that's the point. I'm giving these stat blocks out and I'm giving you guys encounter ideas because I want people to use them, and the more people in the D&D community that can see this kind of stuff, the better. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you guys so much, because me being able to do this kind of stuff is just something I never imagined I could do. And, even though there's not much interaction on these videos, I still enjoy every single view I get, because I think a lot of people, they get into this mindset of, oh, this amount of likes, or, oh, this amount of views, it's not good enough. But honestly, even just like 12 views, that's 12 people who were interested enough in my content to even click on my shoddy thumbnails. That is just insane and so amazing to me that I just have to give my thanks. And, I'm rambling, and once again, thank you so much. I will be linking VaatiVidya and Miss Chalice's channels, because they do great Elden Ring lore videos, and it's really helped me understand some of the things about the DLC and some of the things that the DLC has added to the lore, and just my understanding of the lore in general. And with that said, I give you all one last, very deep in my heart thank you, and I want you all to have a wonderful week.